My dad refused to pay for my college while fully funding my cousin, but I exposed the hidden secret about his true identity and plunged them into chaos. I am a 28-year-old man, married to my wife, Haley, who is also 28. We've been together for a couple of years, building a life that feels like a quiet triumph after everything I've been through. A few months ago, our world expanded with the arrival of our firstborn, a beautiful baby boy who has become the center of our universe. In a moment of joy, we shared photos of him on Facebook, wanting to celebrate this milestone with friends and family. Looking back, I realized that decision was a misstep, one that opened a door to a past I'd worked hard to leave behind. A relative saw the pictures and sent them to my father, a man I hadn't spoken to in nearly 10 years. Our estrangement began when he made a choice that shattered our relationship. He paid for my cousin's college tuition in full while refusing to support mine. What stings even more is that my cousin never asked for it. My father simply decided to give it to him, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Growing up, I always knew my father had a soft spot for his brother, my uncle. Their bond was unspoken but undeniable, rooted in years of shared history and mutual reliance. I never questioned it as a child, it was just the way things were. My cousin, Peter, and I were born just a couple of months apart, and though we weren't siblings, our lives were intertwined in a way that felt like a strange, unspoken rivalry. We were constantly vying for my father's attention, each of us desperate for his approval in our own way. My mother left when I was only a few months old, overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood and unwilling to navigate the complexities of raising a child. Her absence left my father to raise me alone, a role he took on with a mix of duty and distraction. Meanwhile, Peter grew up with both his parents, my uncle and aunt, who ran a small cafe that struggled to stay afloat. Their constant work left Peter craving attention, and he often turned to my father, who seemed more than willing to step into the void. My father was a successful head of sales at a firm, a position that gave him financial stability and a sense of authority. By contrast, my uncle and aunt were perpetually strapped for cash, their cafe teetering on the edge of failure. My father's generosity toward them was a constant in our lives: loans, handouts, whatever they needed to keep going. As a kid, I didn't mind. It didn't occur to me that his generosity might one day come at my expense, that he might prioritize their needs over mine, his own son. That realization didn't hit until much later, when the weight of his choices would alter the course of my life. Peter and I were close in age and competed in everything, from sports to grades to who could make my father laugh the loudest. It wasn't malicious, but it was relentless, a silent contest for a prize neither of us fully understood. In high school, I found my footing academically. My grades were solid, often a notch above Peter's, who struggled with math and failed a few assignments. By our senior year, I'd pulled ahead, and I carried that achievement like a badge of honor. I worked hard, not just for myself but to prove to my father that I was worthy of his investment, his pride. I dreamed of college, of building a future that would make him see me. But when the time came to discuss tuition, my world came crashing down. My father sat me down and delivered the news with a matter-of-fact tone that still haunts me. He wasn't going to pay for my college. Instead, I was expected to apply for scholarships, to figure it out on my own. Meanwhile, he would cover Peter's tuition in full because, in his words, Peter needed the help more. His parents' financial struggles apparently justified the decision, as if my future didn't matter. I was stunned, hurt, and furious. How could he choose Peter, someone who wasn't even his son, over me? I argued, pleaded, tried to make him see reason, but his mind was made up. He called Peter my brother and told me I needed to have a heart, to think of family. When I pushed back, pointing out that Peter wasn't my brother, that we shared no blood, his face hardened. He told me that if I was going to speak that way, I could leave and fend for myself. The betrayal cut deep. I was 18, full of pride and pain, and I walked out without a plan, fueled by anger and a need to prove I didn't need him. I crashed with friends, cobbling together a life in the weeks that followed. I cut off contact with my father, ignoring his attempts to reach out, his half-hearted pleas for me to come home. Not once did he offer to reconsider, to support my education, to acknowledge the hurt he'd caused. That silence spoke louder than any words could. I was on my own, and I had to figure out how to survive. College, the dream I'd held onto, slipped away almost immediately. I applied for student loans, but without an adult to co-sign or guide me through the process, I was denied. I enrolled anyway, hoping I could make it work, but after a few days, the reality of unpaid tuition forced me to drop out. It was a gut punch, watching my peers move forward while I was stuck, scrambling to survive. I took a low-paying temp job at a company, working grueling hours to cover rent, groceries, and bills. My roommates weren't exactly sympathetic. If I didn't pay on time, I risked losing the roof over my head. Every day was a grind, a test of endurance. I'd lie awake at night, wondering if this was all my life would be, a cycle of scraping by, with no degree, no safety net, no family to lean on. But I didn't give up. I poured everything into that job, taking on extra shifts, learning every task, proving my worth. Slowly, things began to shift. My hard work caught the attention of my supervisors, and over time, I climbed the ranks. Today, I hold a solid position at the same company, one that provides stability and a sense of accomplishment. It's not the life I'd imagined as a teenager, poring over college brochures, but it's a life I've built through sheer determination. Along the way, I met Haley, my wife, whose warmth and strength grounded me in ways I didn't know I needed. We fell in love, got married, and now, with our son, we're creating a family of our own, a family rooted in love, not competition or betrayal. Looking back, I don't regret the path I took, though it was harder than it should have been. I'm proud of what I've achieved without my father's help, without the college degree I once thought was my ticket to success. I've heard through mutual friends that Peter, who got the education my father paid for, is working at a firm and has a family of his own. But his life isn't what mine is. His house, his lifestyle, they pale in comparison, or so I'm told. I won't lie, there's a part of me that feels a quiet satisfaction in that. Not because I wish him ill, but because it proves I didn't need my father's money to make something of myself. I did it on my own, against the odds, and that's a truth I carry with pride. Still, the wound from my father's decision lingers. It's not just about the money, it's about what his choice said about his love for me, about where I stood in his heart. He chose Peter, a cousin, over his own son, and that betrayal has shaped every step of my journey. It's why, when those Facebook photos of my son reached him, I braced myself for what might come next. I wasn't ready to reopen that door, to let him back into my life without reckoning with the past. But the call came anyway, and with it, a flood of emotions I thought I'd buried long ago. I met my wife through this job a few years ago, and now we have a son together. I wouldn't say it was all bad for me, things worked out pretty well, even though I didn't go to college or get the life I thought I deserved. I had to work a lot harder than most people my age, but I don't mind it now because my hard work made me who I am. I have no regrets, really. I know Peter is also working at a firm and has a family of his own, but I don't think he earns as much as I do, which must be a slap in the face for him. A couple of friends told me they've seen his house and lifestyle, and it's not as great as mine, even though he's the one with a college degree. I was proud when I found out he wasn't living as well as I was. I almost contacted my dad to ask how he felt about it, but didn't because I didn't want to be petty. The bottom line was that I won, and he lost, even though the cards were stacked against me. That was good enough for me. I didn't need to talk to either of them to prove anything. Over the years, my dad tried several times to reach out and get back on good terms with me. He'd wish me well on every birthday, Christmas, and New Year's. I never replied, but I never blocked him either because I kept waiting for him to apologize just once. The weirdest thing, and my biggest issue with him, was that he never apologized for what he did. He didn't think it was wrong and believed it was completely justified to prefer Peter over me, even though I was his flesh and blood and only son. That's why I never responded, even when he expressed disappointment that he wasn't invited to my wedding. He did text to say he wanted Haley and me to be happy forever and blessed us, which made me feel a little bad. But then I remembered there was still no apology, and that stopped me from feeling sorry for him because he evidently never felt sorry for me. He continued to text me after that, but I still didn't respond. He never called, which was weird because he could have tried, but I guess that was overstepping for him. That changed a few weeks ago after my son was born and we posted about him on Facebook. After that post, I received a call from my father, the first in almost 10 years. I picked up, despite myself, not knowing what to expect. Somewhere deep down, I hoped he'd finally apologize, even if just to see his grandson. But I was disappointed yet again because he didn't apologize or address what happened all those years ago. He just said he was upset that I got married without him and now had a son he wasn't allowed to see. He told me his heart was breaking and wished I'd forget about everything and not make a huge deal out of it, as I had been for the past 10 years. I don't know in what world it was fair to say I was making a big deal out of nothing, especially when he chose to pay Peter's tuition over mine, forcing me to drop out of college and work my way up from the bottom. I would have had a significant advantage if I hadn't had to drop out, but because of him, I didn't. I wasn't a bad student, just not good enough for a scholarship and definitely not bad enough for him to give up on me and pick Peter instead. I lost my cool and told my dad I regretted answering his call and not blocking him years ago because I'd been hoping for an apology like a fool. That apology was never coming because he didn't regret his actions. He tried to argue that I was being unfair, which was crazy coming from him, who didn't even know what fair meant. I told him, in a fit of anger, that I was probably his second son and Peter was definitely his oldest, judging by how he treated us. I guess I went too far because I insinuated that he and my aunt had an affair, which led to his favoritism toward Peter. I didn't stop there and told him to go talk to his other son instead and stop wasting my time. Then I hung up on him. In hindsight, I see now that my outburst was a misstep, a reckless flare of anger that ignited a firestorm I hadn't anticipated. The words I hurled at my father in that heated phone call, calling my cousin Peter his other son, were meant to wound him, to mirror the pain he'd inflicted on me years ago. But the fallout didn't stay confined to us. Instead, it was my aunt who reached out, her text a sharp rebuke that cut deeper than I expected. She called my words unforgivable, insisting she had no part in the rift between my father and me. She felt dragged into a conflict she didn't create, accused of something sordid just to hurt my father. Apparently, my comment had wounded not just him but her and my uncle too, and they demanded an apology for crossing a line I hadn't even realized I'd stepped over. I haven't responded to her yet, paralyzed by indecision. I don't know what to say, and the truth is, I'm baffled as to why my father shared our private conversation with them in the first place. It was a moment between us, raw and unfiltered, born of 10 years of pent-up resentment. My words were for him, not meant to ripple out and hurt others. I don't lose sleep over my father's feelings, nor my uncle's. They've both played their roles in the fractured family I've known since childhood, and I've long since stopped expecting fairness from either of them. But my aunt? That's different. Her kindness stands out in my memory like a beacon in a storm. Growing up, she was the one person who didn't play favorites, who treated Peter and me with equal warmth, even though Peter was her son. She could have easily fallen into the trap that everyone else did, pitting us against each other in that unspoken competition for affection. But she didn't. She was fair, gentle, always ready with a smile or a kind word when I needed it most. I remember summer afternoons at her cafe, her laughter mingling with the clink of coffee cups, offering me a slice of normalcy in a childhood marked by rivalry and absence. Knowing I've hurt her makes me feel like a fool, like I've betrayed the one person who never betrayed me. That comment about Peter being my father's son, it was a low blow, a personal jab that didn't need to involve her. I regret it, not just for the pain it caused but for how it tainted the one relationship in my family that felt untainted. I turned to Haley, my wife, to make sense of the mess I'd made. She listened quietly as I poured out my frustration, my guilt, my confusion. She didn't take sides, but her words were a mirror I couldn't avoid. What I said was mean, especially to my aunt, who had always been a steady presence in my life. Haley's perspective grounded me, reminding me of the values we've built our life around: honesty, accountability, love. She didn't push me to act, but her words lingered, urging me to consider an apology. Yet, even as I grapple with that urge, a part of me bristles at the thought. My father's role in this looms large. He didn't need to broadcast our argument, to turn a private wound into a family spectacle. His loose lips set this in motion, and I can't shake the feeling that he's deflected his own guilt onto me, letting me bear the weight of everyone's hurt. So, am I the asshole for what I said about Peter? The question gnaws at me, a tangle of pride and regret I can't quite unravel. It took nearly a week of silence before I found the courage to respond to my aunt's text. I'd spent those days turning the situation over in my mind, weighing the hurt I'd caused against the hurt I'd endured. Finally, I typed out an apology, my fingers hesitant but deliberate. I told her I was sorry for what I'd said, that my father's actions had cut so deeply that the words slipped out in a moment of anger. I didn't mean to hurt her or my uncle, my aim was never to drag them into this mess. I added, carefully, that I hadn't expected my father to share our conversation, a subtle jab to let him know I held him accountable too. I knew my aunt would relay the message to my uncle and father, and if he was perceptive enough, he'd catch the undercurrent of my words. I wasn't apologizing to him, not now, not ever. Haley read the message before I sent it and nodded approvingly. She called it the perfect balance, a genuine apology to my aunt, who deserved it, and a pointed non-apology to my father, who didn't. He knows what he did, choosing Peter over me, forcing me to abandon my college dreams, never once showing remorse or offering an apology. To me, that makes him unworthy of my regret. My father's decision all those years ago wasn't just about money, it was a declaration of where his loyalty lay. I was his son, his flesh and blood, yet he poured his resources into Peter, as if my future was less worthy. The memory of that betrayal still burns, a wound that never fully heals. I worked tirelessly to build a life without his help, clawing my way up from a low-paying temp job to a stable career. I met Haley, built a family, and found a sense of pride in what I've achieved. But the cost was high, years of struggle, of feeling abandoned, of knowing my father saw me as secondary. He can dismiss it as petty, but the facts remain. His choice altered my path, and his refusal to acknowledge it only deepens the divide between us. As for my uncle, I feel nothing for him. Our relationship was never close, even when I lived with my father. He was distant, avoidant, and quick to fuel the rivalry between Peter and me. He'd compare us, subtly favoring his son, as if I were an interloper in their family dynamic. My aunt was the exception, her warmth a counterpoint to his coldness. So, when she texted me, hurt by my words, it struck a chord. I owed her an apology, and I gave it freely. But my father and uncle? They can feel whatever they want, anger, hurt, indignation, it doesn't move me. I've done my part, made amends to the one person who deserved it. If my aunt chooses not to accept my apology, I'll respect that. I've said what I needed to, laid my guilt to rest, and now it's up to her to decide what comes next. Reflecting on it now, I see how my words, though born of anger, carried a weight I didn't fully grasp. That phone call with my father was a collision of past and present, a moment where 10 years of silence and resentment boiled over. I'd waited so long for him to acknowledge his wrong, to say he was sorry for choosing Peter, for leaving me to fend for myself. But he didn't. Instead, he deflected, shared our private fight, and let the fallout spread. My aunt's pain is the collateral damage of his actions, and while I regret my part in it, I can't help but trace the root back to him. This family, with its tangled loyalties and unspoken grudges, has always been a minefield. I've spent years navigating it, trying to rise above the hurt, to build a life with Haley and our son that's free of this baggage. But moments like this remind me how hard it is to outrun the past, how deeply family ties can cut, even when you've tried to sever them. My aunt replied to my apology after 3 days. I'd almost given up hope of her responding. She said she was okay with it, but her husband and my father still expected an apology from me because what I'd said was disrespectful to them too. I told her plainly that wasn't going to happen because I didn't care about what my father or uncle felt. It was a tit-for-tat thing. They don't care about my feelings, so I don't care about theirs. The only reason I apologized to her was because she was nice to me when I was a kid. They weren't, so I don't feel the need to apologize to them. My father taught me we shouldn't say sorry when we don't feel it, so I was just following his advice by not apologizing. My aunt got ticked off and said I couldn't behave this way and expect people not to get mad. Honestly, I don't care if they're mad, and I thought that was clear. I told her again that I didn't care. I did my bit, and beyond this, I'm not doing anything because they're not my priority. Right now, I only care about my wife and son. They can cry about it as much as they want, but it won't affect me. I could see she was typing more, and I wasn't interested in continuing the argument, so I blocked her. Haley thinks this is the end, and I hope it is, but I know they'll try to milk this and make a huge thing out of it. My hunch was right, and I don't know if I'm happy or upset about it. Peter put up a long post on his Facebook account about what I said, accusing me of disrespecting his parents because I was jealous that he was favored more by my father. I don't understand why he thought it was a shocking revelation. I was clear about my problems with him from the beginning. I never hid my jealousy, and all our friends knew about our rivalry, so his post wasn't doing what he thought it was. He publicly demanded an apology from me, not just for his mother but also for his father and my father, his uncle. It was ridiculous. I almost typed a paragraph to comment and tell everyone what was really going on but decided against it at the last minute, backspacing my entire comment. I didn't say anything because it wasn't worth the drama. I knew they wanted me to comment and engage so the drama would escalate, and I'd end up looking like the bad guy, even though my father instigated me first. By not responding, I ensured they didn't have an opportunity to create more fuss out of nothing. Haley thinks I have the right idea because commenting would just make things worse. I don't need to explain myself. I apologized and did what I had to. If they want to keep playing the victim, they're free to do so as long as they keep me out of it. So, I blocked Peter. Since we don't have many friends in common, it doesn't matter what he says about me. The people who know me and my past won't judge me by his post because they know the truth, and that's all that matters to me. My strategy of not responding to Peter's post worked, and he took it down. It also helped that my friends who knew the truth commented on the post and told him to remove it unless he wanted them to share my side of the story, which wouldn't look good for them. I guess he got intimidated because he wanted to retain the pristine image that my dad, his brother, and my aunt had painted of themselves at my cost. So, he deleted the post, but not before messaging all my friends individually, saying they'd end up on the wrong side of history for this. That's unnecessarily dramatic. I highly doubt our feud will end up in history at all. There was no need for him to message my friends privately and say such weird things. I'm almost embarrassed for him and definitely embarrassed that I'm related to this family because they're all cuckoo. I'm just glad he's not airing dirty laundry in public anymore because it would have been strange if he kept the post up and I didn't respond. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they let go of this now because I don't want to talk to them again or hear about some new stunt they pulled. I want to spend time with my wife and son and don't have energy for their useless theatrics. Haley and I are grateful to each and every one of you because it means the world that people who don't even know us are rooting for us. It's pretty touching, and I'm really happy I posted here when I was dealing with the dilemma of what to do. Anyway, I received an email from my uncle a couple of days ago, which shocked me because the contents were insane. At first, I was surprised he'd reached out at all since we didn't end on a good note. I almost didn't open the email, but Haley suggested I at least read it because if they were reaching out after so long, they must have something important to say. She had a point, so I opened it and still haven't come to terms with what I read. As it turns out, Peter is my dad's biological son, and my aunt and father did have an affair, so I was right about that. I hate that I was right because it means Peter and I are biologically linked, which is disgusting. The only thing I had was that at least we weren't biological siblings, but I guess we are at least half siblings, and I can't deny that now. Here's how my uncle found out. When my father went to their house weeks ago, he was discussing what I'd said with my aunt in private while my uncle was at the cafe. But my uncle barged in during their conversation, and my dad was at the part where he mentioned what I said about Peter being his other son. Since my uncle overheard part of it, my dad had to repeat it, and he was acting weird about the whole thing, which set off alarms in my uncle's head. My uncle got more suspicious when both my dad and aunt started acting overly outraged at what I'd said, blowing it out of proportion. He knew I'd said it out of anger and didn't mean it literally, but their reactions made him think otherwise. Their behavior blew their cover. He thought they were overreacting, and when they got Peter involved and asked him to post about it despite my apology, my uncle decided things were really weird, and he needed to get to the bottom of it. He knew my father would never entertain a discussion about it, and he wasn't going to risk talking to his wife in case he was wrong. So, he did the only thing that occurred to him. He contacted my mother to ask if she knew anything. It took him a while to track her down, but he found her a couple of weeks ago, and she confirmed everything. She told him she wasn't ready to be a mother anyway, and when she found out about my father's infidelity, it gave her an excuse to leave. It also explained how she got out of paying child support and secured a hefty settlement. But yeah, she came clean because it's been a long time, and now the truth is out. My uncle told me all this in a passive-aggressive email, thanking me for being a jerk, which is how he finally found out about his wife's cheating. So, they're getting divorced now. My dad's not speaking to either of them anymore, and Peter has cut everyone off. My uncle said he hopes I'm finally happy, and you know what? Yeah, I am. I am finally happy.